Hey guys, we are back again. In the last video, we have covered basic introduction about the income tax for quick revision for the next upcoming examinations. In this video, I'll be covering the entire salary chapter. 100% of the concept will be covered. Yes, we will be solving very less number of problems, but whatever the provisions that we required for writing salary head, we will be covering in this video. So I hope you like the video. So let's start. Salaries, section 15 is a charging section. I keep telling that whenever you are reading any head, be it salary, be it house property, be it PGBP or capital gain or other sources, there will be a charging section for each head. So unless we read that charging section, we should not be going ahead of the chapter, because the charging section itself gives us a lot of information about what needs to be charged under the respective head. So in this case also, section 15 is a charging section. Yes, this will not be asked in the examination. For our interpretation purpose, we need this charging section. Any amount due to or received by an employee, including arrears of salary from an employer or former employer, and falling within the purview of the meaning of the term salary, is chargeable to tax under the head salary. Okay, so what they are trying to say is, in order for you to ask tax from an SSC from the head of salary, there has to be a employer-employee relationship. For everything, there should be an employer and employee relationship, and whatever the employee receiving, that should be within the purview of the term salary. Okay, so in simple words, they will define what the salary means also, but it has to be a salary, and that has to be received from the employer. The employer might not be the present employer, it can be your past employer also, which means that if after the retirement, if you receive something from your employer, even that will also be covered under the head salary. It is not under any other head. The only reason being, you are receiving it from your employer or former employer, including arrears of salary. So what do you mean by this including arrears of salary? Like I'm working for a company for last 5 years. For the last 2 years, we are all proposing for a revision of my salary, but they are not accepting it. The management is not okay to increase my salary. But now, after so much of hangama and strike and everything, they are increasing my salary retrospectively from the last 2 years. So this is arrears of salary. So the salary which I could not receive from the previous years, I am receiving all at once in the current year. Even that will also be termed as a salary, and that will also be coming under the head salary. Okay, so the important points, as I said, there has to be employer and employee relationship, and contract of service and contract for service. This is important for 1 mark also, kind of. Contract of service, which means if I am working for a company like Reliance, then before joining the firm or the company, I will be entering into an agreement that is called contract of service. So in that contract of service, they will be telling me that, Sampath, this is your role, this is a position that we are offering, this is a salary we want to pay, you have to come at this time, you have to abide by these regulations, policies, procedures, whatever the company is following, I should also be a part of it, I should be following it, be it the dress code or the etiquettes or the way, the kind of work that I do. I should not be engaged in any other business which is against the company. So this is called contract of service. The contract I am entering as an employee for my employer. So this is called contract of services. Now we will see this term, contract for service. So what do you mean by contract for service? Now I am not working for any company. I am providing my services independently. So when I am providing my services independently, there is a client who is telling me that, Sampath, I need this report by kind of in next 15 days or 1 month. So that is my agreement, that is my contract. There he will not tell me, Sampath, you should behave like this, Sampath, you should come at this time, Sampath, you should be doing this work. No, he will not do, no, he will not control me. It's only that he will tell me the broad parameters as to what the work needs to be done. That's it. He cannot tell me like how I should be behaving, at what time I will be coming, what dress I will be wearing, from where I am working, is it remote or on site. I mean, they will not decide everything. No, it is up to me to decide how I can discharge my responsibility. So the second thing is called contract for services. Sir, why are we giving such a big lecture? Reason being, Contract of service will go into the head of salary. Contract for services will go into the head of PGBP. So like for my professional work, whatever I receive from my client, that is my business income. But if I am employed in a company and I am entering into a contract of service, whatever they are paying to me, that will come as a salary. Okay, so this could be a 1 mark question. And director of the company. So is a director an employee of the company? Is there a employer-employee relationship? That we cannot say. That has to be based upon the facts of the case. What facts that we need to check? If he is a director who is executive director, he involves in day-to-day operation of the business. He comes to the office regularly. He undertake the responsibility of performing various activities. So he is just like an employee. Yes, his position is good, but company can control him. Company can direct him. Company can tell him like what should be done, what should not be done. Okay, so he's an executive director. So whatever he is receiving in the form of an executive director, that will be termed as a salary. I mean, because there is an employer and employee relationship. Take an example of independent director. Okay, so they don't come on a regular basis. They have nothing to do with your operations. They only come for the board meetings, only come for the AGM, only for the big decisions they'll come and they'll raise their point. Okay, so the independent director, whatever we are paying to him, for him it is not a salary, for him it is a professional income. He will be charging under PGBP or other source depending upon what kind of a role he is playing. I mean, like is it like a business for him, or is it just like providing a random services? Depending upon such factors, it will be either PGBP or other source, but it will not be salary for an independent director. Okay, and coming to MPs and MLS. So MPs and MLS, though they are working for us, but they are not employed by the government, and at the same time they are not employed by us. So in our location there is an MP or an MLA. I cannot tell him, hey, yes, you do this, you do that. I mean, I cannot tell him. So I'm not employer for him. I cannot direct him what to do. Yes, I have my expectation, but I cannot directly go to him and tell him. Okay, so they are not employed by the public nor by the government itself. So MPs and MLS, whatever they are receiving, there is a lack of employer-employee relationship. There is no such relation called employer and employee for an MLA and MP. Because of that reason, whatever they are receiving, that will be their income from other source, but not be salaries. Advocate general, like people who are fighting case in favor of us, or maybe for our benefit. So they are not employed by the government. Okay, and again we are also not employing them. It's not that I'm a company and I can tell him like when to come, what to come, and what to do, what not to do. I cannot tell all those things. It's just like a professional relationship. So there is no employer-employee relationship for a advocate general. So he will not be paying tax under salary head. And coming to judges, so judges, they sit there and they are like providing services on behalf of the government. So it's like a role given by, or they are chosen by the government. So it is more like a employer-employee relationship, and whatever we are making, we are paying to judges, that will be taken under salary head. Year of chargeability, when do you charge them? On the receipt basis or actual basis, whichever is earlier. Surrender of salary, so this concept is important. I am working for a company, I am getting a salary of 10,000 rupees. 10,000 rupees. So what I am thinking is, instead of taking the entire salary, I want to donate certain amount to a fund, a charitable fund, or for a COVID relief fund, or some PF relief fund, something like that. I want to do it for a betterment of the society. Okay, out of 10,000 I want to donate 2,000 rupees. So can I say that my salary is only 8,000, not 10,000? Can I say that? The answer is no, because though you are surrendering for someone else, but still it is your salary. You should say your salary is 10,000 but not 8,000. Here in this case 10,000 is a small amount. Take an example of 2 lakh, 3 lakh or 5 lakh. It will be salary. Okay, so we will not be deducting this surrender of salary. The only exception is that if you are doing such a voluntary surrenderment of your salary as per the section 2 of voluntary surrender of salaries exemption from taxation act 1961, if you are doing it according to or as per the section of that act, then you can say that that is not your salary, which means that it is not accrued in your name. It is not at all accrued for you. That's it. Okay, so that is a surrender of salary. And coming to the next one, deductions, again I'll repeat my point. For every head there is a charging section, for every head there is a deduction section. Sir, what are you saying? We have 5 heads, right? For salary we have certain deductions, for house property we have certain deductions, PGBP we have certain deductions, like from 30 to 37 everything is a deduction for you in PGBP. In capital gain also you have deductions 54, in other source also you have a deduction 57. So what I'm trying to say is, for each head there is a charging section, for each head there is a deduction. In the same way, for salary also we have a deductions. We have 3 deductions, 16.1, 16.2, 16.3. Actually 16.1 was demolition long back, again they brought back recently. The standard deduction was or is 50,000 rupees. So if I'm working for a company, my standard deduction as per 16.1a, no, because that was deleted and then added back, they will not be using the same name. Earlier it was 16.1. When they deleted, again they cannot use the same name, so they are adding some extra addition to it. 16.1a, 50,000 is a standard deduction, right? So I hope you understand that point. Standard, there is no questions asked. Coming to the entertainment allowances, this deduction is available only to the government employees. Only for them there is an entertainment, not for the others. So only government employee will take the entertainment allowances, and out of that only 1/5 of the salary or 1/5 of the basic pay or actual or 5,000, whichever is lower, will be allowed. So what are you saying? 1/5 of the basic pay or 5,000 or actual, whichever is lower will be given as a deduction. So whatever the employer, whatever the government is paying to a government employee, that will be first added, and then as per this section this will be deducted. Understand this point very carefully. See, if the government is giving him 5,000, just like an example, and is also eligible for 5,000, there is no taxable, you should not be living like this. There is a wrong way of presenting in the examination. The first of all, whatever employer is giving to employee, that has to be taken as a salary, first thing, and then whatever the deductions that are there for these 3 sections, that will be deducted later on. Okay, so you should not take any decision on your own. First you add it, then whatever is allowed as per the section, you can deduct it. Okay, so the entertainment allowances only available for the government employees, and that is also 1/5 of the basic pay or 5,000 or actual, whichever is lower, will be allowed. Coming to the third one, professional tax. So professional tax, sometimes employer pays to the employee. So when employer pays to the employee, that will be added to the salary. I am working for a company, 2,000 is my professional tax, 2,000 out of 2,000, 1,000 is paid by my employer. So when 1,000 is been paid by my employer, that is to be added as my salary first, and then whatever the payment I am making towards this professional tax, that will be deducted. Come again, whatever is paid by the employer will be added, whatever is paid by the employee will be deducted. That's it. Okay, so the deduction should be under this section, addition should be from the main section, I mean like main portion. Whatever is paid by the employer to employee, that will be added, irrespective of, forget about all exemption and everything. And then whatever is allowed here, professional tax if paid by the employee or assessee. So the assessee, whenever is making the payment, whatever is making the payment, that will be deducted, right? So I'm not doing this problem, and I hope you can do it, and I'll be sharing this PDF also. So whatever the question that I'm not doing, you can do it on your own, and we have answers also. You don't have to search for other answers. And just now in section 15 I was talking about the charging section, right? So charging section may like anything received by employer, by employee from the employer or former employer, including arrears of salary, which is coming under the purview of the term salary, will be taxable, okay, like we have talked about just now, right? So we should understand what all will come under salary. So the section is very wide. In simple words, anything you can say, but in examination you cannot write anything, right? It has to be wages for workers that will be paid, annuity or pension, people who have retired and they are getting, for gratuity on retirement also you will get this gratuity, and again we have a payment of gratuity act, as per that it will be allowed as an exemption. Now any fees, commission, perquisite, profit in lieu of salary or in addition to salary or what. So sometimes what I do is, instead of paying you as a salary, I will give something else to you. Okay, instead of giving you as a salary, what I would do is I will give you something other than salary. Instead of calling it as a salary, I will keep it some other thing, or ESOP I can say, or some termination benefits or anything. It's up to them, but they are giving it, instead of salary they are giving some other profit, so that will also be termed as a salary. Advance of salary, so this is again a tricky point for you. Advance of salary, advanced against salary, there are some there is a small difference here. Advance of salary means you are receiving salary for the next year, that is called advance of salary. Now it is April, I am in need of money, I am going to my employer and asking, sir, I want salary for the current month. Yes, I know you will pay it, but I also need the salary of the next month, like May ka month, whatever the salary I would get in the May, I want it right now. So I don't take the salary next month, I will take the 2 months salary in the current month only. So that you call it as a advance of salary. And coming to the other one, advanced against salary, which means that I'm going to my employer and asking him, sir, give me 1 lakh rupees. And then he's like, okay, what is a guarantee? So I don't have anything to show as a guarantee. My salary is my security for you. If at all I cannot make the payment of this advance, you can keep deducting it from my subsequent salaries. So that is called advance against salary. Understanding? Advance of salary, I am receiving next month's salary in the current month only. When I am saying advance against salary, I am not forgoing my salary. I'm just saying that is my security. In case if I fail to make the payment, repay you money, you can deduct it from my upcoming salaries. Okay, so leave encashment, again this is also kind of a question you can expect in 4-5 marks. What this point says is leave encashment. I am telling you to take a leave of 30 days in a year. So I'm telling you to take a leave of 30 days in a year, but you are so hardworking that you are taking only 10 days as a leave and 20 days you are accumulating. Means 20 days you are not taking the leave and you are working to the company. No, you are coming to the company and working for the company. So which means that you are really a hard worker. I am asking you to take a leave, but you are not taking, you are coming and working, right? So whenever you retire, whenever you resign, okay, you should be compensated. Okay, whatever the leaves that you could have taken but you have not taken, for those leaves I will give you some amount. How do we give that amount and what will be the effect, we will see in today's session only. But for timing, even the leave encashment is also a salary for the purpose of the Income Tax Act. And again, this is like very important in examination, you can expect a question here. I am an employer, you are my employee. So what I am doing is I am contributing to your PF in excess of 12% of the salary. I'm sorry, I am the employer, you are the employee. I am contributing to your PF, recognized provident fund, in excess of 12% of salary. So that is taxable. Come again, if your salary is 100 rupees, I should contribute only 12 rupees to your PF account. But if I contribute more than 12 rupees, maybe 13 rupees, that 1 rupee extra, that will be taxed as a salary. Okay, so employer's contribution to the employee's provident fund in excess of 12% of salary will be treated as a salary. And the next one is 9.5%. So when you are contributing to a fund, I am also contributing to a fund. The fund at the end of the year will generate some interest, some revenue. So the fund will give you some interest to you, not to me. If you are an employee, the fund will give interest to you. So when they are giving an interest up to 9.5%, it is not taxable. Beyond 9.5%, it is taxable for you. So this is what we see in Section 7 also, income deemed to be received in India. Employer's contribution in excess of 12% of salary, again that will be deemed to be received in India. It's a taxable thing. Fund is generating income and is giving some interest to you, that is beyond 9.5% of both our contribution, for yours and mine. So both contribution, they are giving more than 9.5%, that will be taxable for you. That will be treated as a deemed to be received in India, and that will be taxable as a salary. Okay, so and this one was also same, coming from Section 7. When you are about to retire, you had accumulated your money in unrecognized provident fund, or maybe I have contributed in unrecognized provident fund on your behalf. Okay, so when you are about to retire, so when you are receiving the money, you have to pay tax on that unrecognized provident fund. Say whatever the money that you withdraw, that will be taxable. But just to avoid the tax, what you are doing is you are converting from unrecognized provident fund to recognized provident fund, which is as per the law recognized provident fund. So when that conversion takes place, no, that will also be treated as a deemed to be received in India. That will be taxable for you. Okay, so these three are coming from Section 7. And then perquisites anyway we will see, like small understanding I want to give you. When an employer giving you an amount, that we call it as an allowance: house rental allowance, educational allowance, hostel allowance, or transportation allowance. So we are keep using the word allowance when an employer is giving to an employee certain amount. But sometimes what I do is, instead of giving you some amount, I will be giving you a benefit. So there I will be calling it as a perquisites. Rent free accommodation is a perquisite. No, car you are using, usage of car is a perquisite. I have a furniture and furniture I am giving it to you, it's a perquisite. Okay, or I am giving you a loan at a concessional rate. SBI is charging 16%, I am charging you only 12%. That 4% is a rent a perquisite for you. So anything which I'm not giving in cash is going into your perquisite bucket. Yeah, so come back to our discussion. The value of rent-free accommodation provided to the assessee by his employer. So I am an employer, I am giving you rent-free accommodation. So don't pay me any rent or concessional rent. You take my house, you can use my house. So that is my rent-free accommodation. The value of any concession in the matter of rent respecting any accommodation provided to the assessee by his employer. I think it's coming the same way. The value of any benefit or amenity granted to or provided free of cost or at a concessional rate in the case of a specified employees. So I'm giving you any other facility. Amenity ka matlab like any other facility, like there is a gym. I am paying the annual subscription. As an employer I am paying, so that will be taxable for you, for a specified employee. Any sum paid by employer in respect of any obligation on behalf of the employee. So this is like, there is a tax that you should pay it, or there is a servant working in your home, you should pay for the servant, but I am only paying it. There is a gas bill that you have to pay, I am only paying it. So whatever is your obligation and I am paying, that will be perquisite for you. Okay, so life insurance also same thing. Keyman insurance policy will come into the picture, and the sweat equity shares also same thing. Okay, so sweat equity shares, like you are sweating a lot, you are working hard for the company, and you are working hard for the company. So I am giving you shares at a lesser price than the market price. In the market there is 100 rupees share price for my company, I will be giving only for 80 rupees. The 20 rupees is your perquisite. And this is an amendment. Amount or the aggregate of amounts of any contribution made to the account of the assessee by an employer in respect of recognized provident fund or national pension scheme or in an approved superannuation fund, extent it exceeds 7.5 lakh. Okay, so up to 7.5 lakh it's fine. Beyond 7.5 lakh it will be taxable. Okay, so and again I'm reading few more things. So few people might think that why am I reading it here is, there are a lot of questions. Different authors are having different questions. Institute is having a different question sets, practice model is having a different question sets, or study material is having a different question sets. Instead of solving some 100 questions, we are solving the base provision of the law. So once you understand the base provision of the law, all other questions can be doable if you really properly understand and apply. The value of any medical treatment provided to an employee or any member of his family in any hospital maintained by the employer. So I am Yashoda Hospitals or Apollo Hospitals in Hyderabad. So you are working in my organization itself, you have some disease, so you are coming to the hospital for the treatment. So I am providing you the medical benefit in my own organization, so there is no taxable. It is not taxable, okay, because it's my own company. Any sum paid by an employer in respect of any expenditure actually incurred by the employee on his medical treatment or treatment of any member of his family. So you have a health issue, so for that I am incurring an expenditure, that is not taxable. So how come we can make such a big statement? It's not for everybody, only for some conditions. What are the conditions? In any hospital maintained by the central government or local authority, or any hospital approved by the government for the purpose of medical treatment of its employees. Okay, so the treatment which I'm proposing it for my employees should be in a government hospital. Okay, in government hospitals, like here in Gandhi Hospital, like in Hyderabad, like it's a government hospital. So I'm incurring the expenditure for my employee or their family members for the treatment to be done in that government hospital. What they charge, even if they charge also, they charge small, like less amount. For that also I can incur, and you don't have to pay tax. In respect of a specified disease or ailment in any hospital approved by the principal chief commissioner or chief commissioner. So there are certain ailments like which are like deadly kind, like AIDS or cancer or some, like there is a list, big list. So if they are approved by the principal commissioner or commissioner, and if I'm incurring certain expenditure for my employee or their family members for that ailments, be it any other hospital, it's fine, only for the specified ailments. Any portion of premium paid by an employer in relation to an employee to effect or to keep in force an insurance on the health of such an employee under any scheme approved by the central government or IRDA. Okay, I am a company, I have 20 people in my organization, I'm taking a group policy, I'm making the premium to the insurance company, be that is approved by the central government or IRDA. So the policy that I'm taking is not from the private players, that policy has been approved by the IRDA or central government, and I'm doing it that for my employees. Whatever the premium that I paid to that company, that LIC or whatever, that company, that is not taxable for you or in your hands. I'll repeat, I am incurring insurance premium, I'm paying to a company, and the policy that is framed is for the entire organization. The policy has been approved by the central government or IRDA, then the amount I'm paying to the LIC or any other insurer, that will not be treated as a perquisite in the hands of the employee, right? And this is important. 15,000 point I'll not read and tell you. I'll not take you as an example. There is a person who is my employee, who is coming to the office. While coming to the office, on the way to office, he met with an accident. It's a small accident. He got admitted into a nearby hospital, and he incurred some 10,000 rupees as a medical treatment. So what I feel is, out of gratitude, gratuitous gesture, because he's coming to the organization, he met with an accident, so it's not his personal thing. So I will reimburse the amount that he has incurred for that medical treatment, so that will also be not taxed. So put it simply, up to 15,000 if employer is reimbursing it to employee on an actual basis. What I mean by actual basis, it is that the employee has to incur and then I have to reimburse. Up to 15,000 is not taxable. Take other way around. There are few employees, I am just telling, for every month you take 5,000. So will that be taxable? 100% taxable, because it is not a reimbursement. The term, understand the word reimbursement, the employee has to incur first and then I have to reimburse them. So in that situation only up to 15,000 is not taxable, else it is taxable. And this is also kind of important for examination point of view. One of my employees got some disease, and there is no such medical facility in India for that disease. I mean, that is kind of a different or difficult disease, and they can find the proper hospital in Malaysia or Singapore or Japan. They want to go to some other country for the treatment. So I'm encouraging them to go out. I will incur all lodging expenditure, I will incur all treatment expenditure. So that is a very good gesture. No? So then the income tax is saying, yes, you can do to your employer. I mean, you can bear the expenditure of the employee for the foreign treatment, fine, but that employee has to be a small employee whose total income should not exceed 2 lakh rupees. If it is a small employee, is having a disease, or his family member is having a disease, is going to a foreign and I'm incurring expenditure, it's fine. But the only two condition is that his total income should not exceed 2 lakh rupees, and when he is going abroad, he should not spend an amount which is more than what is prescribed by RBI. If RBI is saying that you can incur only 5 lakh rupees, this person should incur only 5 lakh rupees, not more than that. If he is incurring 6 lakh rupees, that 1 lakh will be taxable, remaining will not be taxable. The condition is his income should be less than 2 lakh and he should spend the amount which is in accordance with the RBI guidelines. Okay, there is one question, you can do it same exactly whatever I said in words. You have a number here. Yeah, so now we will go to the next segment of this. Employer means I am the employer, you are the employee. I am so concerned about the amount that you are spending for your house as a rent. So I can give you HRA 1013A. That section will come into picture. I can give you some amount, so house rent allowance, or I can give you rent free accommodation. These two are possibilities. We'll see both at once, so have a better understanding. When it is in HRA, least of the following will be exempt, as everybody knows that actual rent paid in excess of 10% of salary, and third one is 40% or 50% of the salary. So what you're trying to say, what I'm trying to say is, if an employee is incurring rent or is paying rent and which is 10% of his salary, it's fine. What the law believes is, I'm incurring certain cost for my transportation, I'm incurring certain cost for my livelihood or my food, everything. In the same way, if an employee is incurring 10% of his salary as a rent, it's fine. But if he's paying more than 10% of his salary, that has to be given as a allowances. Okay. So in simple terms, actual amount or 10% rent paid in excess of 10% of salary, or 40% or 50% depending upon the area. If he is staying in metropolitan cities, it is 50%, otherwise it is 40%. And what do you mean by salary? Salary means basic pay plus DA if it is forming part of retirement benefit, plus commission as a percentage of turnover. I'll repeat, the salary for this definition, it is salary for definition, meaning of the salary is different for different sections. It is basic pay, DA, star mark, means it should form part of your retirement benefits, and commission as a percentage of turnover. If you are achieving a turnover, I'm giving you some commission, it's fine, it will come here. If I'm giving you commission just like that, it will not come. Okay, so that is this segment, like the HRA segment. And coming to recognized rent-free accommodation, I can give you a rent without charging you anything. The place which I am giving you could be owned by employer, it's my own, or it could be hired, or it could be in a hotel. These are the three possibilities. Or if you want to go little bit more, if it is a government. If it is government. Okay, so if the employee happens to be a government employee, whatever the license fees prescribed by the government will be the rent-free accommodation for the employee. It's fine, there is no calculation. If it is owned by employer, which means it is mine, I'm not paying it to anyone, it's mine, it's owned by the company itself, it is giving you for your to stay with your family. Okay, so then though I'm not paying to anyone, still it is a rent-free accommodation. It will depend upon the population of the city. If the population is up to 10 lakh to 25 lakh and 25 lakh and above. Okay, so these are the three different criteria. If the population is up to 10 lakh, 7.5% of your salary will be your rent-free accommodation, or 10% of salary will be your rent-free accommodation if it is between 10 lakhs and 25 lakhs, and 15% of salary will be your rent-free accommodation if the population is more than 25 lakhs. Here the salary means it includes everything, what are the monetary benefits that the employee is getting. And coming to hired means I am taking it from someone else, I am taking it on a rent basis and I am giving it to you. So understand how much important you are to me. Okay, in that case whatever I am paying, like actual hire charges or 15% of salary. Sir, why there is a point of 15% of salary? Because I should not be giving you a facility which is not at your level. Take an example, if you are an ordinary employee, like your salary is only 25,000, okay, but if I'm giving a 5-star hotel, so the amount that I pay for the 5-star hotel will be like a huge. If I keep everything as your rent-free accommodation, you will die. Okay, literally you will die. So it means that what they are saying is you can give it whatever the house that you want to give, but make sure that the rent-free accommodation or the amount that you pay for the hire charges should not be more than 15%. Even if you're paying more than 15% of salary as a hire charges to someone else, still you can take only 15%. In simple words, lower of the following will be termed as rent-free accommodation. Coming to hotel, so you are staying with your family in a hotel is like a very big thing for the company. Okay, they'll not let like all the members stay in a hotel. When they do, when you are transferring from one location to another location, something like that. Okay, so what the law says is up to 15 days if you are paying for your employees, fine, because he needs some time to settle down, he needs some time to look for other houses and all those things. But if it is more than 15 days, it is actual whatever you are paying to the hotel or 24%, because in hotel the rent will be higher, no? So because if it is a hotel, it is 24%. If it is like simply hired from someone else, then it is 15%. So this is the maximum that you will have for the rent-free accommodation. And you have who are the specified employees, director of the company, be whatever the director you are, you will be a specified employee, or employee who has a substantial interest. What do you mean by substantial interest? He's having 20% stake in the company, or employee drawing in excess of 50,000 rupees as a salary. He will be a specified employee, right? So coming to the next one, what do you mean by profit in lieu of salary? Okay, I'm giving you a profit in lieu of, instead of salary. What all will come? Compensation on account of termination of his employment. Okay, so you are working in my company for last 10 years, your salary is 2 lakh rupees per month. It's a very good salary. But what I'm saying is, because of COVID situation, I don't want you keep paying my organization. I don't want to pay you 2 lakh rupees. Instead, I'll take 2 new employees whom I can pay only 25,000 rupees per month. I'll take 2 employees in place of 1. So you will be like crying, no? You are getting 2 lakh rupees earlier. Now you will not be getting 2 lakh rupees. You have to search another way. So then you will not compromise. So to make you compromise, I'm giving you like 5 lakh rupees or 10 lakh rupees lump sum amount. So that will be profit in lieu of salary, or compensation on account of modification of the terms and conditions of the employment. So earlier your salary was 2 lakh. Now you are like, sir, I'm okay to take some lesser amount also. So instead of 2 lakh, I'm giving you only 1.5 lakh. Then you are like, why are you decreasing my salary? I need some compensation. So you take my compensation. Even that will also be termed as your salary. I mean profit in lieu of salary. Payment from provident fund or other funds, that we discussed earlier. Keyman insurance policy, like you are such an important component of the company, you are an asset to the company, your worth is like irreplaceable. So I am taking an insurance policy so that something happens to you, I'll get some money from the insurance company. Okay, or maybe if you retire and then you get the money, either you will get if you survive, or your family members will get in case if you don't survive. Okay, so that is like a Keyman insurance policy, that whatever I'm paying is like a profit in lieu of salary and lump sum payment or otherwise. Okay, any other bulk amount I'm paying in whatever the name I'm calling it, that will be profit in lieu of salary. So retrenchment, only point you have to remember is when I'm removing you, like on the spot, I'm retrenching you, I'm taking you from my out of my organization because you have done something wrong, or maybe because I'm not having enough capacity to pay. So then 15 days average pay for each completed year of service or part thereof in excess of 6 months, which means if you have worked for 22 years and 7 months, that will be termed as 23 years. So it will go to the next number if it is for more than 6 months or more. Okay, and for each month 15 days salary he will be giving it. For completed year of service, you round it off. Then for each year, half of month salary or actual amount or 5 lakh rupees. Just remember this formula. I mean, like this methodology. Very rare this question will come in the examination. Coming to voluntarily retirement compensation, here there is a possibility of question. Voluntarily retirement ka matlab, you are retiring on your own. I'm not removing you. Okay, so when you will retire on your own, when you have something, some more period to cover, kind of you are 45 years now. At 25 years you join the organization. At 40 years you want to go for a retirement. You could have been in the organization for till 65 years. So this is the completed year of service. 25 to 40 means 15 years, and 40 to 65, 25 years is you could have served had you not taken the VRS. So this is a one element for the formula, this is another element for the formula. So I'll read the formula. Compensation actually received, obviously for every list of the following actually received will come, and 5 lakh rupees just like retrenchment compensation. Now your focus should be on the last two. So 3 months salary for each completed year of service. What do you mean by that? Just look back how many years you have served. For each year 3 months salary I will give you. I'll repeat, if you are retiring now, just look back how many years you have served for the company, completed years of service, then multiply with the 3 months of salary. And coming to the second leg of it, last drawn salary, how much ever you have received last, what was credited in your bank account at last, then remaining months of service left. Had you not taken VRS, how many months you would have done here? 25 years multiplied by 12, so 300 months you would have served had you not taken the VRS. So this multiplied by last round salary. Okay, so there are 4 elements. Actual 5 lakh, so anyway it will come. Remaining 2 will be completed year of service multiplied by 3 months of salary, or last round salary and look further. One is look further, one is look back, behind. So one look further is how many months you could have served. Okay, that the opportunity kind of a thing, opportunity cost with study, something like that. So there is one illustration I am not solving because we have a lot of time. HRA though we discussed, and there are some special allowances. You have to remember this. For transport people and people who are working in the transportation, 70% or 10,000, whichever is lower, will be given as a exemption for them. Or for transport allowances for others, like whoever is not working there, I mean like kind of other people. Earlier it used to be a transport allowances of 1600, that has removed. Don't remember that. That's removed. Delete that. 3200 is given only for the people who are blind, deaf, dumb, or orthopedically handicapped with a disability of lower extremes. So they are whoever struggling with these issues, they are being given 3200 per month as a transportation allowances, not for others. Okay, and children education allowances 100 per month per child up to maximum of 2 children. Okay, so if you want to educate your kids, you should incur only 100 rupees per month. That's it, per child 100, maximum of 2 kids only. Okay, so I'm not sure what kind of education you will provide at 100 rupees, but as per law, if an employer is giving to employee only 100 rupees per child, maximum of only 2 children. Okay, and if you are like tired of your kids and want to join them in an hostel, 300 rupees per month per child up to maximum of 2 children. While calculating, make sure you calculate separately. Okay, so don't combine both, separately for one kid, separately for another kid. Maximum 100, maximum 100, maximum 300, maximum 300, like this. If you have to do, otherwise the answer will be wrong. Okay, so compensatory hill compensation, like people who are at the height of 1000 meters or more, 300 rupees per month. Certified notified areas 800 per month. Siachen and Jammu and Kashmir 7000 per month. And this, just remember this one because it will come in the examination. If you are working in a tribal, you will be given 200 rupees per month. Counter insurgency allowances for armed forces 3900 per month. Underground people who are working in a mining 800 rupees per month. Just you have to remember before going for examination, there is nothing concept here. High altitude 1060 or 600 depending upon the feet from the baseline. And important, so this is all you are having is important. And coming to the pension, if it is received during the service, it's always taxable. If it is received after service, for government employees it is not taxable. And there is something called commuted pension, which means that, see, I have retired today, my age is of that age that I am retiring today, my pension is 10,000 rupees per month. Okay, so every month I should be getting 10,000 rupees as my commuted pension. Normal pension, like uncommuted pension, normal pension. Okay, so then what I'm saying, this 10,000 rupees per month is like a very small amount. I'm not able to live. I have my kids or granddaughter or grandson, for whom I need to buy some bigger item like a laptop, or for their marriage or for their education, I need 10 lakh rupees. This 10,000 से मेरा काम नहीं चल रहा, like I'm not able to live with this 10,000 rupees per month. So then I'm going to my employer and asking, sir, I don't want this 10,000 rupees. I want to forgo 50% of my 10,000. From next month onwards, I will ask you only 5,000 rupees, because 50% right I'm relinquishing, I'm giving it out. But for that I want 10 lakh rupees. So this is what I'm going and asking to my employer. I'll repeat, instead of taking 10,000 on a monthly basis, I'm really tired of getting that money. That's such a low amount. I'm going to my employer and asking 50% I will forgo, remaining 50 only I'll receive from the next month or subsequent month till I'm alive. The portion for which I have forgone, give me a lump sum amount of 10 lakh rupees. So this is taxable? Yes, it is taxable. And then the income tax is like, okay, so these are all old age people. How can you simply charge everything as a tax, because they are receiving lump sum, no? So they said, if you are a government employee exempt, so that's the reason why we should search for a government job. Okay, so if you are a government employee and you are receiving this commuted pension, yes, exempt. But if you are a other than a government employee, it will depend upon whether you are receiving payment of gratuity act. I mean payment of gratuity. I'll repeat. If you are receiving payment of gratuity, you are receiving gratuity. You already have a lump sum amount. Why you need to compute now? Why you need to commute? You are trying to be greedy now. Understand? There are 2 employees, 3 employees. One is government, he will smile. There is no tax. There are 2 employees. Now this employee is given gratuity. So now again he wants to do the commutation. Then the law is like, you already have a gratuity. Why you are taking commuted pension now? Because you are taking commuted pension, I will give you less exemption. So that less exemption is 1/3 of 100% commuted. Had you commuted 100% of your pension, what would have been the amount that you would have received? So here for 50% he is receiving 10 lakh, right? Had he commuted 100%, he would have received 20 lakh. So how much exemption I will give? I will give 1/3 of this. Understand? Whatever is receiving, we will do it 100%. And if you are covered under the payment of gratuity act, you would have received the payment of gratuity, then I will be giving lesser exemption. A 3 lakhs mein 20 lakhs mein 3% bolta, something like 6 lakhs and some change will come, right? And there is you are not paid payment of gratuity. There is no you are not received any gratuity. You are not trying to be greedy because you don't have a gratuity now. Because you want to commute, I will give you more of an exemption. More matlab I will give you half as an exemption. Bolto 10 lakh rupees I will give as an exemption. For the other person, I am giving only 6 lakhs benefit, I am giving you 10 lakh benefit. Sir, how do I remember? The easiest way is, if he had received the gratuity, he would have had some money in his bank account, he wasted that, or maybe he is trying to be greedy, give him lesser benefit. Now you have not received any gratuity, okay, so I want to give you more benefit, okay? So that's how you can remember that. Numbers you can do, the numbers are very easy if you understood the concept what I said. And coming to the gratuity, you can expect some 5 marks question on this, but not just this question, उसमें थोड़ा इधर-उधर मिला के they'll be framing a question. So gratuity में the formula is like bit tricky, but I'll tell you the way to remember it, okay? So anyway, as you know, the list of the following is exempt. That is for everyone. List of the following is exempt. For this 20 lakh, for both it's same. See, there are 2 employees again. He is under payment of gratuity act. You are not under payment of gratuity act, okay? Means not you, your employer has not enrolled in a payment of gratuity act. His employer has enrolled under the payment of gratuity act. From the law's perspective, law will give more benefit to the person who has enrolled under the payment of gratuity act. So whenever I am giving benefit, whenever I am calculating something, I will give more benefit to the one who has listened to my word, who has abided by the law. I will give less of a benefit to you. I will give you the benefit, but I will give you less of a benefit. How do I remember? Actual 20 lakhs for him, for you also actual 20 lakhs. There is no issue with that. Gratuity received 10 lakh, gratuity received 10 lakhs. For him also, gratuity, actual gratuity received. For both it's same. So for the first 2 points, for 20 lakhs, actual received. Now the cinema will start. Okay, here 15 days of salary for the one who has covered under the payment of gratuity act, I will give you more of a benefit. So I will calculate 15 divided by 26. For him, because he covered under the payment of gratuity act, I will give more of a benefit. 15 divided by 26. Here you see half month's salary. You are not covered under the payment of gratuity act. I should not be giving you the same benefit I am giving it to him. I should be giving you a lesser benefit, which means I will take 15 divided by 30. Sir, what is this difference? You calculate yourself. 15 by 26, his number will be a bit higher. 15 by 30, your number will be a bit lesser. Okay, so I am giving him more benefit while calculating the percentage. I am giving you lesser benefit. On the last drawn salary, for him, last drawn salary. For you, 10 months average salary. So what is the difference? See, normally when you are about to retire, your salary will kind of increasing trend. Take one random example. Here his salary is 50,000. After 2-3 months, it could be 51,000, or maybe it is 52,000. Just randomly. Don't think that's such a hike, but there is a randomly. So because he is covered under the payment of gratuity act, I will calculate based upon the 52 only, because that is his last drawn salary. But for you, I will not take 52. I will take 10 months average salary. So if I do 10 months average salary based upon this, obviously you will be getting lesser benefit. Remember my methodology of understanding. Because it's covered, I'm giving you more, 15 by 26. Now for you, 15 by 30. For him, last round salary. For you, average 10 months salary. Understood? For him, for each completed year of service or part thereof, which means if he has served for 26 years and 7 months, I will make it 27 years. I will round it off if it is 6 months or more. But for you, if you have served for 26 months and 26 years and 11 months and 29 days also, I will ignore every fraction. Okay, so that is the effect on you. For him, 6 months or more will be rounded off. For you, it will not be rounded off. Okay, so and one more important issue. What do you mean by the salary? I want to give you more benefits. So for him, I will say basic plus DA. But for you, I will not say like that. Basic plus DA, but the DA should be forming part of your retirement benefits. If it is not forming part of your retirement benefits, it will not be taken into your salary consideration. So you will be getting given lesser benefit. So in every aspect, you are given lesser of a importance. Okay, so that's how you can calculate that gratuity wala. And then leave encashment is also something important. I would like to throw a bit light on this. So leave encashment 3 lakh rupees like statutory limit, and actual leave salary, that is also understood. Now these two are important. Try to understand as much in details as possible. The first chunk talks about 10 months average salary. This is fine, sir, I understood this. There is no logic here. Here the first one says whatever the credit is in your name, based upon 30 days credit in a year, I will convert that into a number of months and then I will give you as a credit. Not understood? Take one example, you will understand here. Mr. Gupta retired on this date after 20 years and 10 months of salary, received leave salary for 5 lakhs. Other details are as below. Basic salary as given. There is an increment of some amount. I'm not talking about that. You can do calculation like when it has increased, what was the salary before that, what was the salary after that, and you have to take 10 months salary, average salary. Okay, so that is like a basic mathematics. DRS allowances 30,000, 3,000, 60% of which is forming part of retirement benefit. So we will take only 60%. Commission 500 per month, we will not take that. Bonus we will not take. Leave earned availed during the service 480 days. So here he has availed 480. So how you have to calculate here is he worked for 20 years. Every year he was given 30 days. He should have been given 30 days. So 60 days is his entitlement. He used 480 days. He enjoyed. So 120 days he saved. So that is a credit. This credit you convert into monthly terms. So 120 divided by 30 kare to you are converting the number of credits in your name at the rate of 30 days in a year into number of months and multiplied by what was his salary. Here you can see 120 days. Okay, I have not calculated here. 120 days divided by 30 and multiplied by the average per month salary, you will get this. Okay, so this is a tricky point. I will just explain once. Statutory limit 5 lakh actual, so anyway you will remember. And the third one is average 10 months salary, that is also fine. The fourth one is maybe company is giving 45 days in a year. You don't have to calculate that. You have to calculate for each completed year 30 days is his overall entitlement. How many months he has actually used, that you have to take. The how many days he has used, you have to take. The remaining is his credit entitlement. The remaining you have to convert into a number of months, which is by dividing by 30 you will get number of months multiplied by average salary. That is your last bit of the question. Provident fund, it's not required now. So if you are withdrawing money from recognized provident fund, then you don't have to pay tax. But if it is from unrecognized provident fund, your portion it was not allowed earlier. See, as an employee, I am contributing in unrecognized provident fund. Had I contributed in recognized provident fund, I would have received 80 ka benefit. If I am contributing in unrecognized provident fund, which means what? I am not getting any benefit. So when I am not getting any benefit now, why should I pay tax when I am withdrawing from it? I should not be paying tax. But the interest on that unrecognized provident fund, I should pay tax. Remember, if I am contributing 100 rupees, I cannot deduct 80C 100 rupees. No, that is not possible. But when I am withdrawing that 100 rupees, that time also I will not pay tax, because you are not allowed earlier. Why should I pay now? That is not allowed. That is not taxable. But on that 100, if the fund is giving me any interest, that interest will come into my income from other sources. Okay, that one point you have to understand carefully. ये अनफर्निश्ड का तो हो गया, लाइक आई एक्सप्लेन यू. एंड depreciation, so you have to take 10%. You remember, for any furniture, if the employer is giving to employee, that will be taken as 10%. Whatever you are given, whatever the employee is giving to employer, that will be deducted from the perquisites. And coming to interest free or concessional role, you want to take a housing loan, you are going to SBI, they are charging 18%, but I am charging only 12%. The difference amount 6%, that will be rent free accommodation or concessional rate of loan. Okay, that will be taxed as a perquisite. But this will not be applicable when you are asking your employer an amount for for treatment of certain ailments. Okay, it's not like you want to have fun. It's just that because of some emergency you are taking a loan from the employer for some diseases, then there is no tax. I mean, there is no perquisite only. Whatever the interest rate, there is no perquisite. But if the loan is amount up to 20,000 rupees, then also there is no perquisite. And domestic servant, this point I have explained. There is a domestic servant in your home. I am paying some salary to the domestic servant, that will be perquisite for you. And electricity and all those things, if it is owned by me, like I am into the electricity generation thing, then I am giving it to you as that facility. Cost will be taken, not a profit, only cost. But if it is from someone else, whatever I am paying to them, that will be perquisite for you, right? And education facilities, if the education, like if there is a big school, okay, so I am working there, my kids are also studying there. So what they say is, whatever the company, whatever the school is charging to other students or for the similar services, that will be my perquisite. But up to 1,000 there is no tax. So remember this one point, 1,000 is like a amount. If the perquisite is up to 1,000 rupees, there is no tax. If the perquisite is beyond 1,000 rupees, everything is taxable. And if I am giving you a motor car, the depreciation will be like transfer of a movable property. I am transferring it to you. I am transferring it to you. So what will be perquisite? Whatever I have already used, उसमें से I will be deducting the depreciation. The depreciation rate will be 20% for motor car, computer के लिए 50% and other के लिए 10%. They check the methods also. And for motor cars, it's a very strange formula they have given. I'll tell you from my side. It's very easy formula. If for a driver, it is 900 per month, there is no question. But if the expenditure is incurred by the employer, see, his own car, he's only incurring the expenditure, is giving the car to me for my personal use. Okay, so then it is 1,800 per month or 2,400 per month, depending upon the CC, 1,800 or 2,400 if it is incurred by the employer. But if it is incurred by me, it is 600 or 900. Okay, so just remember like that. That's it. Don't fall behind it. For free or concessional meals, if you are working in an organization, they are providing you some free food up to 50 rupees per meal, it's fine. Don't pay any tax. Gift up to 5,000 rupees, you don't have to pay any tax. So that's all what we have for today's session. I hope you find the video helpful. If you find it helpful, please let me know in the comment section. We'll be making more videos of it. And also please share it with your friends. That will be encouraging for me also. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.